Shivaun. Good morning. How are you?
I'm okay, I'm awake.
Right. Okay. Listen, I am going to tape this interview if that's okay with you with my phone.
Oh, that's fine.
That's great. Thank you very much. So, just maybe a few words. I don't think I'll be keeping you very long because the idea would be to do a short podcast for the Sean O'Casey Festival in September. And I've been doing a few music podcasts recently, and I thought maybe, you'd be interested in talking to me a little bit about your dad and, his attitude to music. But also, I was going to say to you, I don't know if you remember me at all. We met very briefly 2 years ago.
Yes?
You were in Dublin, and I came to speak to you after a chat, just to let you know that, because I mean you probably don't know who I am, and I said to you that basically I owe my children to your dad because I was a student in France a very long time ago, and I studied.
That's right.
Yes, so and I'm a friend of Joe Mooney. But anyway, so that's how I.
Yeah, I can hear a tiny bit of your French accent.
Yes. And so I've been here a very long time. I came here in 1982. And my work on Sean is,
You didn't do the library, did you? That was another woman.
no. I did a master's called, Sean O'Casey Politics and Arts in the Dublin trilogy because I was very interested to see what his attitude was in relation to, kind of going for another medium, which would not have been maybe from his origins. So I was really interested in this, and then
Right.
then life happened, and I stopped my studies. But I come from a very working class background as well, and that's why I thought when I read his plays, it really resonated with me from a French point of view.
Where do you live, Danielle?
I live in Dublin now.
Oh, right.
Yes, but and my children are Irish, of course. So,
Yes.
but I also saw that. So we'll try to do a podcast with bits of this dialogue and bits with Paul O'Brien, and
Can
so
I just tell you a few things before you start?
yes, absolutely.
I'd to ask you a few things, really. Have you heard the Paul Brady CD of Sean's songs?
That was my first question to you. I knew that you were interested in the topic because you had kind of, I believe you commissioned this piece of work, didn't you?
No, I didn't commission it, but I allowed. He was. It's a bit complicated. His producer was Sean Murphy, and he had to get his permission, but he had died in order to redo it because it was done ages ago.
Yes.
Yes.
So I did.
I didn't really have anything to do with the making of it. It was Paul Brady and Sean Murphy.
Right. Okay.
And of course, John Kavanagh sings all the songs.
Yes, and I was actually familiar with some of the tunes I had listened to a very long time ago, and I don't remember under what circumstances, but so and also
They're very interesting arrangements, which is nice. It brings it up to date, sort of thing.
yes, and I was also struck by the fact that when there's very few pieces that you can have access to on the internet about your father speaking. But I've also noticed that in the interviews he gives, very often he breaks into a song. So
yes. Can't stop him.
yes, so
He did some tapes in his later life when he really couldn't see very well with my mother.
yes.
And it was Bernard Miles's suggestion. He sent him this Grundig tape recorder. And Sean was never felt very good at doing this sort of thing. It was new to him, if you know what I mean. So he decided to base his memories on the songs throughout his life and in the plays. And I don't know where these take. I know I've got copies of them somewhere, but lots of people, they're all around that. They are in the National Library of Ireland with all his stuff.
Right.
But it's quite interesting. It's a long haul, a lot of work.
Yes.
To go through them would be quite interesting for you, I imagine. But you know,
yeah, I would say so. But
they are there, and he talks about why this song is, why he's singing this song, and all about it, sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to know from you really is that do you have any recollection of your dad being at, I mean, my dad died at 2 years ago, and one of the things that I really remember him by is him whistling or him singing songs. Do you have recollections of your father being somebody who sings around the house?
Oh yes, he sung a lot. He sung a lot when, if he was quiet and didn't sing, you knew he was not exactly depressed, but wasn't working. He couldn't think what to do.
Right.
But as soon as he started singing, you knew, oh, jolly good, he's writing again, sort of thing.
Right, so that was something that accompanied his writing, because I noticed as well that the first work he produced seemingly is Songs of the Wren, and
yes,
it's a miscellany of ballads, I believe.
yes, he used to write ballads when he was young, evidently. Tom Clark was the printer. Do you remember about him? He was one of the people in the Rising.
Yes.
And he had a printing shop, I think. I think I've got the name right. And he would print these ballad sheets because that's what people sold around Dublin and things. You know, they sold ballad sheets.
Right.
There's a character in Dickens that does the same thing. In Our Mutual Friend, I think it's called. Anyway, so he used to write, they were sort of political, like the Grand Old Dame Britannia,
Yeah.
for instance, yeah. And that one in particular was very popular and had to have a second printing.
Right. And yeah, so I mean, do you recall, so obviously, it struck me that when I saw his interview with Barry Fitzgerald, he just breaks into a song, and I've actually put my hands on the 1955 radio show in which he sings a song about Charles Stewart Parnell as well. But it seems to me, so was your mom musical as well? Did she like singing with him, or did they?
Well, she had a very beautiful voice. She was a contralto, really, and one of the first jobs she ever got was as a soubrette in the D'Oyly Carte Opera.
Right.
And she was, when Shivaun met her, she was with Charles B. Cochrane. He was one of the first people in England to have chorus lines, very famous chorus line, in musicals.
Right.
And his dancers and singers were called the Cochrane Young Ladies, and he brought them up very well, you know what I mean? They were turned out very well. A lot of them married earls and things like that.
Right.
But she was a dancer and singer.
I see. Yes, I knew she was an actress, but I had no idea she was a singer as well. Something very appealing as well, isn't it?
Yes.
And
she gave it all up, obviously. Well, not immediately. She was in Mother of Pearl and Bittersweet and various things before she decided to give it up because of having Brian and not being with him, my brother.
Right, yeah. And, about the family, is it something that would you sing songs together, or did Shivaun?
No, we never did that. Shame, wasn't it? We never had a Kaylee or a sing-around. No. I mean, we did sometimes. I mean, one of my memories of Shivaun is I was in an opera. This lady put operas on at our school when we were between 8 and 13, and it was the Troubadour, Verdi's, and I was playing Count de Luna. And, of course, the famous song in that is Home to Our Mountains.
Right.
I mean,
Which,
letters returning it. I was
yes.
singing it, and Shivaun said, "Oh, that's in my play
Yeah,
Juno."
exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And I said, "Oh," and then I later asked him why, and he said, "Well, they used to have sort of little opera companies going around, and people would pick up the songs, and people would sing them in their front. The more middle class people would sing them accompanied by a piano, and you'd hear the music wafting out all over Dublin because that's what they did. They made their own music in various different ways.
Yeah.
As
Um,
far as he was concerned, it was just the voice, because they didn't have any musical instruments.
yeah. I mean, and the music plays a huge part in Juno with the acquisition of the gramophone as well, of course. Uh,
Yes, yes.
yes.
And all his songs, I mean, Red Roses is full of music, and his big later work after The Silver Tassie Within the Gates is almost an opera, it's full of dance and song.
Yes. And of course, the Silver Tassie is the title of a song as well, I believe.
Yes, of course, yes. He heard that being sung by a friend of his who was what was then called a coal factor. He was a merchant in coal. And he was from Scotland, and he went into the office and he was singing, the Silver Tassie song. And Sean immediately asked him to sing the whole thing and wrote it down,
Yeah.
and then dashed home, and it was sort of what he was looking for is a sort of, what would you call it, a nucleus or something to do with the Tassie. It sort of all came in together to do with winning the cup and singing the song, and then the war and everything, because it's to do with the war and things. So it sparked it wasn't that he wasn't thinking about the Tassie, because he was, but it was something that really excited him as to be sort of an integral part of the play, put it like that.
Oh, I think there's I've been, particularly for this podcast, I've been looking at the development of his usage of song over the trilogy, mostly ending with the Silver Tassie. And you can, in my opinion, you can really see there is a very distinct development with the use of music, in that in the shadow he uses the common man singing, more like we all sing in the house, or when we have people around. And then he uses Juno as a, like he showcases music as almost a character in the play. And then he moves on to the more political stuff in the ironic use of the political stuff in the plough. And then of course in the Silver Tassie there is that chorus as well, which is a very classical kind of structure, which I think it's fascinating. Absolutely.
But he also, remember, uses Gregorian chant.
Yes.
A lot of people don't use in their productions, but for him was a very important part of the theme to do with the war.
Yes, and he seems to have thought about the way he was going to use music in every single of his play, and it's used in a different manner, which I think is, it's just, I had never really thought about this before, because I was more interested in
Cockadoodle Dandy, it ends for the song.
Yes.
It's a lovely song, and after he says to the young Julia who's come back from Lord's, and she says, "Will you help me?" I think his name is Robin, and he says, "I can only say," he says, "be brave." That's all, be brave.
Yeah.
Because she was going to die. And then he goes off to sing this sort of rather uplifting song.
Which is really one of his traits, like put tragedy besides, put comedy to kind of highlight tragedy, and the other way around as well.
Yes, no, you're absolutely right.
Yes. So maybe just ask you, do you remember what kind of, when he was in the home, Do you remember what kind of songs he would sing? Was it something that he picked up on the radio, or something maybe Percy French or something? I don't know. From his youth?
The songs he would sing would be mainly he'd sing in Gaelic.
Really?
I wouldn't know what it was about. But the song he sang a lot to people who came at the table, and we'd all say, "Oh God, Sean, here he goes," was the Bard of Armagh was one of his favourites.
Right.
And then he'd sing not songs from his plays, but Irish folk songs. And then he'd listen. My brother Neil, who died young when he was 21, was very interested in music, and particularly into jazz. And Sean would go, and that's traditional jazz,
Yes.
And Sean would go and sit with him and listen to Lead Belly and
wow.
And then Neil also liked Catherine Ferrier, is that her name? And he'd listen to her. And in a way, that us children, particularly Neil and later Neil and Brie, and particularly Neil, he grew to love Mozart.
Right.
And he'd listen to Mozart and to Beethoven a bit too. But Mozart became his real love, and I think that's because of the melodies in Mozart.
And what about you? Are you interested in are you personally interested in music in particular?
I do love music, yes. I mean, I do. I'm not a musician in any sense of the word, but I went to a school where music was a part very near us, because it had a music school up the road, and then it had a music summer school, and I heard and fell in love with Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau.
Wow.
And we had Benjamin Britten and Peter Pearce came and everything, so it was all part of us, and Stravinsky visited. So
wow.
It was just part of the atmosphere of the school, really, because it was run by this very wealthy American woman called Dorothy Elmhurst, who was a Whitney straight, and a lot of money there. And so she was able to, she loved music and she was able to instigate all these things.
Right. Well, I think I've taken, I was aiming maybe for 15 minutes of your time, so I've gone a little bit overboard. So...
Very love, but look, if you need to ring me anytime, just drop me an email.
Yes, thanks a lot, Shivaun. I really appreciate this. And... I think it'll be interesting. I'm gonna cut my questions out of the recording so that you are, your voice will be heard much more than mine. But do you know what I mean? Because I'm wasting it. I'm not. What's interesting for people to hear is you rather than my questions. So yes, so I'll do a montage. We haven't decided on a date yet, but will be either the 7th of September or the 18th of September for Sean's birthday, I believe, when we will launch the podcast.
5th of March, yes.
Yeah. So I don't...
You do know that he didn't write the tunes to the songs.
Right, yes. Yes, no, he can...
Tunes are from Irish folk.
Yes, yes.
Or other things, yeah.
Yes.
Because he has another song in My Bonny Lines Over the Ocean, I think, is sung by the Codger.
Yes.
The Bishop's Bonfire.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so I'll just say, I hope I didn't take too much of your time, because I know you're going to a funeral or something.
And also, just another thing, his last play, Behind the Green Curtains,
yes,
with a song.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's, you see, I think I'm going to end up, dividing this thing, because I think there's much more than I think there is in there. I had originally thought about talking about the use of songs in the Dublin trilogy, and then when I saw the wealth of of what we discussed, I thought, okay, I believe that actually music probably played a much more important part as he grew older in the
Yes.
composition of his plays.
You're quite right, Daniel. When he changed his writing that they haven't sort of got used to yet in Ireland, the more mythical sort of writing he does, more
Yes,
abstract,
yes, and he's.
like Cockadoodle Dandy and
I mean, every
Rule of the
time,
Night.
every time. I mean, we went back to see the trilogy last year, and every time I see his plays, I'm thinking, this, I am a big fan of the Beach Boys. Every time I listen to the Beach Boys, I think, oh my God, there is so much to it. And every time I go back to see Sean's plays, it is so. I mean, for Dublin at the moment and Ireland, it is so relevant with the
Right.
everything between the accommodation crisis and all the new kind of weird kind of nationalism that's happening.
Yes.
The atmosphere is very peculiar, Siobhan. I've been living here for 40 odd years, and the atmosphere has never been like this. So his plays, I think, are constantly relevant. They really don't. They really don't get old. And
Shame, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, in a way.
Yeah, with all the riots we've had and everything, these awful people like Netanyahu.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything upsetting the whole world, really.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know what he would have to say about that whole thing. I know it's a long time ago.
What would he think of Russia?
Yes, wouldn't it be interesting? Yes.
I think he saw something coming and didn't want to know that it was not going to be like autocratic, but it was not going to be as far left as he thought it was going to be, if you know what I mean.
Yes. Oh, I do. I come from a staunch Parti communiste français background as well, so...
Yeah, well, in France too. I mean, it's everywhere, isn't it?
I mean, it used to be the Communist Party in France was the biggest party biggest party period. They now have, I think, 7% of the votes they got. That's what they got. But anyway, the political situation in France is
extraordinary how people change.
Yeah. Anyway, Siobhan, thank you so much.
Daniel, when I get to Dublin, we must have a coffee.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Would love that. And I will. When I listen to the interview, to the recording again, I might have some questions, because...
Yeah, please.
Yes.
Feel free. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much. And I hope you have a good end of the weekend, although I know you're going to a funeral, which is...
No, I know. It's very sad.
Right.
Yeah, she battled cancer for over 2 years.
Right. Okay.
Anyway.
It's always very sad. Very, very sad.
When they're younger, when they're not my age.
My mother died of cancer when she was 53, and here I am, 66. There's not a day that goes by that she's
too young, isn't it?
Too young, exactly.
Yeah.
So my condolences. Yeah. And thank you so much, Siobhan. I really appreciate it. You've said...
Well, it's lovely talking to you.
Loads of things that I had no idea about. So now it's for me to sort it out. Thank you so much, Shivaun.
Okay, my love.
Bye-bye.
Bye.